Okay, welcome to the Hobbit Desolaiton of Smaug review, take 324 and 95. Everything that can go wrong with this review is going wrong. The film begins with a flashback between Thorin and Gandalf. I've been repeating these names so many times I'm going crazy. Interesting, but not too much to note, aside from Peter Jackson having the same cameo in this scene, which is set in Bree, that he had in the Fellowship of the Ring. And then we get the film pretty much taking up shortly after the first one left off, and we get to meet Beorn the Skin Changer, which is one of my favorite parts of the book. Although the book did it so much better, this case they sold how dangerous Beorn is. The bear form, because he's a skin changer, he can turn into a bear. He chases them into the house. Later that night, he comes back in human form, where in the book, Gandalf introduces himself first and slowly introduces all the dwarves, where in this, he at least serves them a meal and agrees to help them. He's like, I'm helping you because I hate dwarves, but I hate orcs more. And that scene ends. It's a great scene. Beorn did look sufficiently menacing in both forms, and before I go on to Bilbo and Company's, I'm going to talk about Gandalf in this film and the reveal of Sauron, which is pretty well done. He goes to Dol Guldur, and we see where the nine were buried, and that there were these cages that were broken out of. And then he makes it to the... And there's even a scene like it has Radagast in here just to set up the council showing up and to basically give someone for Gandalf to talk to give exposition to explain what's going on. Eventually he makes it to the fortress, and Gandalf quickly deduces there's a magic covering stuff up, so he dispels it and sees the Goblin army setting up the Battle of Five Armies. He has an encounter with Azog, and we get the reveal of Sauron, which is really well done. Gandalf's dispelling magic, and we have this darkness pushing him back until his staff disintegrates. And then we see this... Well, you're looking at the scene now, but the sliver of fire, which is revealed to be the Eye of Sauron, with Sauron in the armor standing in the middle, and Gandalf absolutely horrified when he realizes he was right. It's a very well done scene, and this type of filler I'm okay with, because we know Sauron was the evil presence in Mirkwood in this book. And it's kind of like, this is what happened when Gandalf was off page in the book, so that I don't mind. We get, after the Bilbo and company make it to the woods, we have a very weird kind of trippy scene in Mirkwood, and I feel like even though it's daytime, Mirkwood is a little too well lit for this scene. When you read it in the book, you'll know what I mean. We get the fight with the spiders, which is pretty good, and then Thorin and company minus Bilbo get captured. There's one point where Bilbo loses the ring and like a young spider's blocking him from getting it, and he kills it out of anger. And then when he takes it back, you can tell he's horrified that, well, I didn't kill that thing out of self-defense. I killed it out of anger because it had something. If I just waited a couple moments, I could have gotten. Legolas is in this film, even though he doesn't need to be, and he's the one that takes Orcrist for himself, when in the book it was Thranduil. We have another elf played by Evangeline Lilly, who, although I think her character is totally pointless, she gets some good scenes in this movie. I can at least give it credit. They gave her some interesting stuff. Not now. Sorry, my phone was about to ring, it looked like, but anyway. One of the scenes is between her and Thranduil, where it looked like where they're not look like they're talking, and he's basically like, my son's been taking a liking to you, but I'm not going to let him be with just some commoner. And you can tell she's shattered, not necessarily that he wouldn't let her and Legolas be together, but that after all those years of faithful service, Thranduil thinks that low of her. And then that it ends up going nicely to a scene with Keeley and her, where Keeley has this dwarven ruin, and first he's like, it's magic, if you're not a dwarf and read it, you'll be cursed. And then he explains it's something given from his mother to remind him not to be so reckless. And he drops it, and he's scared for a second, like he's not going to give it back, and she gives it back to him. That's a very nice scene between the two. The dialogue feels really natural. There's a natural chemistry, although I don't totally buy into the romance. We also get, I love how Thranduil's like, I'll let you and your company go to Thorin if you promise to give us this when you take Erebor back. And he refuses, partially out of arrogance and partially out of, Bilbo's still out there. He's going to get us out of this. I know it, which he does. And we get the river barrel sequence because Bilbo loads the dwarves into barrels and just sets them down the river. This scene should have been a 2 or 3 minute scene, but it stayed out its welcome because it had a low attention span, needless orc attack. I'll say this, the orc leading the attack in like the second under Azog, this guy's the epitome of over-designed. Armor embedded in his body, split skull where we can see steel plates bolted into his skull. And this scene exists to get Keeley shot and for Legolas to have cool stuff to do. Not enough there. One of the orcs gets captured, and when Evangeline Lilly hears Keeley's been poisoned, she rushes to help him. Thranduil's like, tell me what we need to know and we'll set you free. And when the orc gives him the info, he cuts his head off, and Legolas is horrified. He's like, that might be an orc, but you gave your word. And I kept it. I freed his head from his skull. And at this point, Legolas disobeys, and he goes to follow Evangeline Lilly. Like, he's horrified seeing his father for what he really is. We meet Bard at this point, who is an important character. He's the one that goes on to kill Smaug with the black arrow, and we find out later his father destroyed one of Smaug's scales with the black arrows when Dale was being attacked. The people of Dale now live in Lake Town, which is a town on the lake, and they're dependent with trade with the elves for their very lives. And I like the look of Lake Town. It's late winter. It's just basically a town floating on the lake. You see bits of ice forming on the water, and you could almost feel the chill in the air. Unfortunately, we have to deal with the Master and Alfred, who I hate these characters. They almost have get off my screen levels of heat, but they're not in the movie enough. Thorin and company make a deal with him, the Master, and they get sent to Erebor, except he leaves a couple behind. Some stay by choice. One is left behind because he overslept, because at this point, dragon sickness is starting to take a hold of Thorin, and he can't be bothered to send someone to retrieve one of his men. And Keeley, who at this point is poisoned, Thorin leaves behind, not for the right reasons, but for the wrong reasons, as you're going to slow us down and we're not going to make it. Granted, I know last light of Doran's Day, they need to make it to the door in time, but he's not leaving his family behind because he doesn't want him to get sicker. He's leaving him behind because he doesn't want to be slowed down. And then we get to Erebor. We get the reveal of Smaug, which is pretty cool. This scene I do really like because it's got so much dialogue ripped straight from the book. And we see the dragon sickness going more and more into Thorin's mind, where they're like, we need to help Bilbo, and he's, what do I care about the life of a burglar? Even Smaug quickly deduces, oh, you're here for the Arkenstone. the king's right to rule. I'm tempted just to let you take it so it'll drive Oakenshield mad. And he promises, well, because dragon speech in the book, it explains that dragons have a way of talking that they can just get the truth out of you. And when he realizes Bilbo has been at Lake Town, he's like, I'm gonna destroy the town. They're gonna burn because of you. We do get a great, even though it's a filler scene, it leads to a scene that gives me chills, and we see how strategically gifted Thorin is, where he tricks Smaug into breathing fire to light the billows. Very well done scene. And then they ultimately pour gold on him, which gives this nice gold walkway in the Hall of the King, which plays to a great scene in the third movie. But Smaug, there's a moment where you think they defeat him, and Smaug flies out of the gold screaming it burns. He breaks out of Erebor, jumps off the side of the mountain and flies up, looks at Lake Town and has this sinister grin on his face, and it ends with Bilbo saying, "What have we done?" That scene is chilling. As well as while that's going on, we also had and that's the final scene, mind you, but we also have the orcs attack Lake Town briefly. We have Legolas and Evangeline Lilly show up. They fight them off. Evangeline Lilly heals Keely, and Bard gets arrested, but he knows Smaug's coming, so he has his son take the Black Arrow and hide it someplace safe. And that's pretty much the film. It's a step down in a lot of ways from An Unexpected Journey, although it has really great stuff. But it's like, it's weird, like, the stuff I'm nitpicking about, you can argue it's a bunch of little things, and I can give you, yeah, it's a bunch of little things, but the thing is, really, little things tend to pile into a mountain, and that's kind of what happened with this film and a trilogy at the whole. Just little things, they're still good, but it keeps it from true greatness, which is even more something to hamper on in the third film, which, in addition to having the most filler, is also the shortest movie. This film, I'm going to give a B. It's still a good film, it's still entertaining, but it's more hampered, and a lot of the stuff I have problems with, granted, if you don't know the book, you're probably not going to mind. But if you know the book and love the book, it's probably going to bother you more. Here's something cool. They gave these out in the theater when I went to see it. It's a Desolaiton of Smaug bookmark that I keep in my Hobbit book and I use every time I read the book. Which, again, if you haven't read the book, I'd say read it. It's a great, fun read. It's my favorite of Tolkien's books. I like this more than the actual Lord of the Rings trilogy, but that's pretty much it, what I have to say on this film for I don't know how many times at this point. I shouldn't worry about it. I know my audience is going to like the review, but it gets frustrating when you've made a review a few times and messed up. So don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and be on the lookout for the next movie. Over and out.